Hi, it's Keith from the Evangelical Free Church, Stony Stratford, and we're continuing our series of short talks in the Gospel of Luke. And today we come to Luke chapter 6, verses 6 to 11. Once again, this takes place on the Sabbath, and once again it concerns the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. And they're watching Jesus to see if he will heal on the Sabbath. It's often said there are exceptions to every rule, and I think that's probably true. If something's a matter of life and death, sometimes maybe a rule or a law will have to be broken. And here we've got a situation. Jesus is in the synagogue. There's a man with a deformed hand, and they're watching to see if Jesus will heal him. In other words, they're wanting to catch him out and saying, actually, he's doing work on the Sabbath. But Jesus is one step ahead of them. He knows exactly what's going on here. Verse 8, but Jesus knew what they were thinking and said to the man with the shriveled hand, get up and stand in front of everyone. So he got up and stood there. Then Jesus said to them, I ask you, which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or destroy it? You see, Jesus doesn't dodge the issue, he actually confronts it. The issue here is the spirit of the law. The Pharisees and the teachers of the law were saying, well, the letter of the law, that's the important thing. No work must be done on the Sabbath whatsoever. But Jesus knows that the law was given for people's good. So it should be understood that way. Let me actually give you an example. In Deuteronomy 23, verse 1, it notes that if someone's donkey or ox is lost, the person who finds it should return it. It doesn't specify that it's any different if it's on the Sabbath. Again, if someone sees someone's oxen fallen, in the middle of the road, in trouble, in distress, then it says, deal with it. It doesn't say, well, if it's a Sabbath, wait until the next day. So Jesus challenges them head on. What's their understanding? Is the Sabbath for good, or does this poor man have to wait? No, Jesus does good. Verse 10, he looked around at them all, and then he said to the man, stretch out your hand. He did so, and his hand was completely restored. We might wonder what the reaction would be. We would expect people to be thinking this is a good thing. But actually, that's not the reaction that Jesus gets here. Verse 11, but they were furious and began to discuss with one another what they might do to Jesus. It's a shame, isn't it, that we can get so caught up in man-made tradition that we miss the point of what the law was given for in the first place. That's certainly their problem here. In the book of Jeremiah in the Old Testament, it says in Jeremiah 17 verse 9 that the heart is deceitful above all things. Who can understand that? You see, when we're left to our own ideas, that's not a very good thing. And inevitably, we will go and we'll embroider stuff, we'll add to it. Just as the Jews were saying, they were trying to be the best Sabbatarians they could be in keeping the law. So they then looked at all the ways the law could be broken. Rather negative, if you ask me. What actually we need is God's law in our hearts. But there's a problem, isn't it? The heart is sinful. But listen to this. In Hebrews chapter 10, it says this, verse 16 and 17. This is the covenant I will make with them. After that time, says the Lord, I will put my laws in their hearts, and I will write them on their minds. Then he adds, their sins and lawless acts I will remember no more. And then it concludes, and where these have been forgiven, there is no longer any sacrifice for sin. Can you see what's going on there? This is God stepping in. It's his doing. It's an act of grace. And because of that, there's no more sacrifice required. The Jews were big on sacrifice. That was the understanding then. That's what's called the Old Covenant. But this is talking about God's new covenant, God's new way of dealing with people. You see, in the end, the Lord realizes that we can't live up to his standards. And so he steps in, showing mercy and grace. And so here's the wonderful thing. If we truly want to be right with God, yes, we come. We seek forgiveness. But then he will step in and do the necessary work to make our hearts right with him. Thank you so much for listening.